So today we are going to be talking about the Safe Option Support Policy. So what is a Safe Option Support Policy? It was created in response to the issues associated with homelessness. Specifically, it is an initiative developed by Coordinated Behavior Care and New York State Department of Mental Health to offer services and support for those individuals who are dealing with homelessness. Um, Speaking directly on homelessness as the issue, according to an article published in the Journal of For the Poor and Underserved, there are over 700,000 individuals currently homeless at any given time. That number may reach up to 1 million. But the Safe Housing Support Policy is directly in New York City. So that's where I'm getting that specific stat from. Some services that they offer include um, documentation assistance, comprehensive referrals, and wraparound support. They utilize outreach teams and do a lot of mobilization on the streets. Some controversy regarding the Safe Option Support Policy, disability and advocacy groups argue that they use coercive techniques in order to get people help. There have been numerous sightings by different advocacy groups, and you'll see I've cited one on the screen. Specifically in the National Coalition for Homelessness, they argue that they use coercive techniques in order to get people to get help. That's the biggest critique of this policy overall. Um, so just going over briefly some of the stated and latent goals. The stated goals of the Safe Option Support Policy would be to help decrease the level of homelessness by providing housing and wraparound support. Um, some of the latent goals would be to minimize strain, protect public order, and reduce homelessness in public. So the outcome of the stated goal of the Safe Option Support Policy would be to keep people safe and gives people access to services and tries to stop future harm. The outcome of the latent goals include it allows agencies to monitor people more closely, higher public image maintenance by making homelessness less visible to others. So now we're going to be talking about the unintended consequences of the Safe Option Support Policy. Before I touch on the unintended consequences, I am briefly going to mention the benefits that they have because I feel like it's important to balance out the two. Um, as a result of this program, over 1,000 New Yorkers are safely housed and connected with the deep essential services. Um, and recently, Governor Hochul has announced that she is going to expand it to other parts of New York, which includes places like Syracuse, Rochester, Western areas like that, which is exciting for people who need support. However, there were unintended consequences of this policy, which includes higher costs of rent. As more people find housing, the cost of rent will increase. There's an over reliance on short term solutions. So the Safe Housing Support Policy operates under immediate needs basis. So they try to find immediate solutions. They look for the immediate safest solution for any situation. They don't really focus on the longer term solutions. That's for housing initiatives or supportive housing developments to deal with. But the Safe Housing Support Policy, because of that, can lead to an over reliance on short term fixes like temporary housing. There's also an erosion of autonomy. As stated before, with the appearance of outreach teams, it can be coercive and it can make people feel like they don't have a choice. They have to say yes to get help, or they have to say they have to get help at that moment, which can make people feel like they don't really have a choice. And also, like, participants may be monitored more closely, which can make people feel watched and uncomfortable, not supported. Um, So we don't have any current information as to whether the Safe Option Support Policy is cost effective. It is a fairly new policy. It was just established 3 years ago. So there isn't a lot of statistical information about that policy to begin with. However, we do have housing initiatives like Housing First that we can compare it to, as they share similar structure and development. So Housing First is cost effective. Um, steers away from over reliance on public systems, and leads to decreased involvement with the criminal justice system. So economically, safe option support policy helped to boost housing stability. So when there is an increased level of housing security, there is an increased motivation to find work, as supported by the article Housing Security and Employment Stability Investigation to Working Mothers. Safe option support positively impacts output as more people are working, people start working. This leads to more stuff being made. The inflation rate is very low with safe option support policy intact because more people are working, which makes inflation lower. It also has a positive effect on unemployment as more people find housing stability. It increases the motivation to find work as you're more likely to want to be able to find that stability or keep that stability. We also know income as a whole, as more people are working and more people find jobs, this also increases the overall income of society, of the general society, which overall helps everyone. So there are currently no proposals for reform for the safe housing support policy. It's a fairly new program, as stated. There isn't a lot of ideas that are being thrown around as of late. However, some policy reforms may include making housing first and guaranteed, client-led care planning, and post-housing support, as a lot of these people are just placed into housing and not given a lot of housing support after or post-housing. So that would be something that would be beneficial for them. These are some examples, but there aren't any current proposals. So, does the safe housing support policy support human rights? Yes, it supports numerous human rights articles, specifically Article 2, which talks about how everyone is entitled to universal rights and freedom. Article 3, which states that no one should be subjected, everyone states that everyone has a right to live. And 5, which suggests that no one should be subjected to torture. This policy also aligns with Standard 6 of the National Association Code of Ethics, specifically Standard 6.04, which directly addresses social work and political action. This policy also aligns with numerous Council of Social Work Education competencies, which include demonstrate ethical and professional behavior, engage diversity and difference in practice, and advance human rights, social, racial, economic, environmental justice. I'm not going to read all of it out for you, but this is pretty much the gist of it. And as you can see, the safe housing support policy has a lot of benefits. It is grounded in the idea that everyone deserves housing. It aligns with the idea that, we must strive to help people. We must strive to be there for people. It aligns with numerous social work ethical codes, which I've briefly touched on. However, I will have to say that I do not support this policy. I will not advocate in support for this policy. It is a government-led system or government-led program that has no input from people who are struggling with the homelessness issue. So that would mean that a lot of these initiatives or these programs that they have within the policy, it may not align with all the people who are currently suffering with homelessness right now. And it's unfair to not include them in the planning process. There's also a lot of complaints from advocacy group, specifically the National Coalition of Homelessness, that directly talks about how this specific policy uses coercive measures all the time, because they're more focused on the numbers than actually helping people. With policies like these, it's also really important to not only look at what human rights policies they follow, but also look at, if it directly connects with the homelessness population, if it aligns with their values, and therefore it's important to, in the future, present a policy that keeps their ideas and thoughts in mind, while also making sure that we do the best we can to help them in the future. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope everyone has a good day.